Creating your own bundle of marks is not only just fun, it's play, it gets your mind off other things, it helps me to relax, but it also helps me to focus. And so this intentional play is so good for me. And so I just wanted to share some simple things that you can do to also kind of gather your own marks. I don't want this to be overwhelming. I don't want you to go buy anything. I don't want you to spend a penny. I want you to use what you have, and I want you just to be aware of what marks you're drawn to. This is why I always am a big believer. It's why in my bigger classes, we always make journals. So we have made journals in almost every class I've ever offered because I am such a believer in them. And I know that I am more present when I have them and I carry them with me. I'm more likely to document and collect and just gather these marks or color palettes or these different things that I think are beautiful. And so I will link all of these journal making videos on our site because I've made them free. But this is the newest one that I've made, and I just made this from a Peg and All kit and I altered it. This is a beautiful journal that was recently given to me by Jeanne Dickinson. And here's just a little Peg and All journal, and I'm just showing you like I have been obsessed with Twombly for about the last 4 years. And so it's always fun to kind of go through work that you love and see like what are you drawn to. It's such a good thing to kind of pull out this. I also love to print out images that I find with great different designs or marks that I think I could incorporate. And don't just think it needs to be painting or drawing. I find beautiful marks in pottery, in metalwork, in stitching. And so have your eyes open. You're going to see them everywhere. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the supplies I'm going to use, and then we're going to get started. So I have some raw canvas here. I have a photo, a negative, I have some old postcards, just one of these cards from the library used to like write the date and your name and check out. I just have some vintage ephemera. Here's just an old envelope, another envelope, a letter, another photo, an envelope, a journal cover, a ledger page, and then I have a couple of pieces of vintage vellum. So I can't even, I bet I bought this off Etsy, but I have a whole pack of it, and it's just older vellum, and I like it because it already has like a patina to it. So this is what we will be putting clear gesso on. I also have some liquid charcoal. I have some stencils. I have a little bit of oil paint for the raw canvas. I have some brushes. I also have just a flower pod and a stick for mark making. I have a Stabilo and I have charcoal. I have the white Stabilo. I have some vine charcoal over here. I have a little linseed oil for the oil. And then I have some ink. I kind of have something fun that I'm hoping is going to encourage you or inspire you to look through your own supplies too. But this is, and I'll show you more when it's time, but I picked it up in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and it is something that mixed with water becomes like eyeliner. And it's what they've used for eyeliner for, I'm sure, more hundreds, if not longer, years. And I'm going to mix it with linseed oil, and we're going to use it as an art supply. I have some different dishes. I have a stapler. I have some copper staples or brass staples. I have a stencil. And then I actually have one of my new stencils that will be coming out soon. And we're going to use that. And here's another part of my line of stencils that will be coming out soon. And then I have some paint. and I chose only one color for this. So I have this beautiful light green, and then I have a white to mix in with it. I also have a neutral gray to mix in with it, and a raw umber just to kind of change that up a little bit. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of clear out my space, and I'm going to be covering all of my vintage papers with clear gesso. I will just be using the Liquitex clear gesso, but feel free to use whatever gesso you have. The reason I'm using clear and not white is because I really chose different vintage pieces, the photos or the negatives or the vintage ephemera, because I liked either the font or I liked the color, or there was something about it that I liked. And so I really want to at first have the choice to kind of really show that off and allow it to be part of our mark making. I am not going to cover my raw canvas with any clear gesso, so I'm going to put that aside and it'll be ready for when we're going to work with that. So all of my little pieces here have been clear gessoed. And so I wanted to explain something because there might be many of you that are watching this that are chefs or interior designers or authors, or you just want to learn how to make inspiration boards, and maybe this isn't even for your business or for your creativity in a very specific way, like maybe how I use it. And I want you to know that don't worry about all of this stuff. First, I want to explain that clear gesso is just like a primer. So just like you would seal some wooden shelves or baseboards before you paint it, it just helps create the seal, which means that anything I put on top of this that's a wet medium won't soak into the paper. And if you do not have these vintage papers, which would be completely understandable if you don't work with them, I do not want you to go out and buy things. I really want you to look for, take photographs of your family that you love and print them out at home on a laser printer. I would love for you to take cardboard from your Amazon delivery and tear those apart and create on that. If you go to a grocery store that offers paper bags, like Whole Foods or some other grocery stores, then use those brown paper bags. I want you to use what you have. It's not about the surface that you're really creating on and creating marks. It's that you are just playing and having fun and using some simple tools to really collect what you think is beautiful. All right, let's start with some of our mark making. I have Speedball Super Black India ink. And I have some different size brushes. And here's the vellum. I'm just going to rip a little bit of this and put it aside here. You'll notice I'm using a brush that is kind of wonky. Obviously, it's my favorite word. And it has really kind of cut bristles, and it's pretty coarse, but that also gives me some really great lines. trying to be perfect with it. And in fact, when I try to make things look perfect, they just don't. and they never have. And so it's just better for me to go with the imperfect, and I am usually much happier with the results too. All right, I have one of these shape makers here, and I'm going to just use this. All right. I'm going to use my flower pot here. Just going to come in. Use the other end too. Let me bring the camera down a little. Let me try with the end of it also. I'm going to take this piece here. Just using the paint color that I have. Just gonna paint just a smaller section on the bottom. Not making anything perfect. And then I'm going to take one of the smallest brushes that I have here, and this is a 0. I take the India ink and just going to do some tick marks. And so it's not always the same from one side to the other. I'm going to just go back and forth with a clean filled up brush, just so like every one of these doesn't have the lightest amount of ink on it. You can go a long ways with ink. It's so fluid. The fun thing about these is that all of them could be cut up, and you could use them in collage. You could use them in other parts of your art. We will be using them just to bring interest into our inspiration boards. And anything that brings in your touch, your hand, your eye, things that you're drawn to, those are always going to be really good things. I think I'm going to also cross it over a little bit. Bring in another piece of our vellum here. Just a smaller piece. I'm just going to be making ovals. And I'm going to speed this one up so you don't have to watch the whole thing. And you'll notice that I have some darker patina. I have lighter. I'm bringing in the paint color here. And then I have the vellum. And I love how you can layer it. And whatever surface we're putting it on, you're going to be able to see through. And this is the thing that's great about mark making. At first you're going to be like, oh, that's so weird, it doesn't look great. And then when you finish the whole thing, lots of marks together just look really cool. So don't over analyze it and worry, because obviously you can tell that I'm not being a perfectionist at all. Bring in one of these brushes from my friend Leslie Rotner, and I'm going to just do some lines here. And just changing the pressure. And I do want a fairly light line over here, so I'm gonna come back in with that 0 brush. All right, and then I have one last one that I'm going to be using with the ink, and then I'm going to do some marks on this, and I'm going to bring in some white marks on this, and then we'll move into some other mark making. So here, I am just going to do tick marks like before, but just larger, and when I'm halfway through this, I'm going to change directions. And you may love circles, you may love totally different marks, and that's what I want you to collect. And if you want to copy these marks at first until you collect your own, that's okay too. That's what this class is. This is just to show you and play and explore, and as you're mark making, you're gonna just by showing up and just by playing, you're gonna come up with your own. All right, I just have a white woody Stabilo. You could also use like a pastel pencil. Here's just a white charcoal. You could even use a smaller white. You could use gesso. You can use white paint. You could bring in a pastel. I just wanted to bring a little bit of marks in here. That's all I wanted to do, just a little something to add some marks, and I'm going to put this one aside. All right, the last one is just going to be our vellum with the ink, and I have some gesso right here. So how we used the clear gesso before to seal it, I now have a white primer, and a lot of times I like it. I just like the how fluid it is. And I always have it on hand, so a lot of times I use that on things like this in place of white paint. So I'm just going to come in here and once again start making some marks. I like that there's some, and you could even go farther than the black. And we can rip this up, layer it over something else. All of this helps you just get ideas. All of this gathering, all of this intention, all of this really sitting and with yourself and thinking, what do I love? What am I drawn to? And none of it is wasted because it just teaches you more about yourself, what you love in the works of others, what you're drawn to and that you want to bring forth in your own life. So, you know, as we're creating these inspiration boards, I'm going to create one that's going to be for future work. I'm going to have one that will be for a future online class. And I'm going to have one that is just about life and just about things that I want to do, that I want to remember, that when I'm looking at it, is my life full of these things that I say are so important? You know how we can say that, but then do our actions equal that? Do they show that? And so it's nice to have something. For me, I'm a very visual person. It's really important for me, and it helps keep me on track. And I love when I get stuck, especially in my art, that I can look at the things that I'm most drawn to, the things that I've even done in the past. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. Look at the marks, look at the color combos, look at the compositions. What did you do that you really loved, and how can you take that and make it better? So you might be wondering, where do you even find inspiration for marks? I find a lot of inspiration in decorating magazines, in like decor and architecture and ironwork and concrete work, and like I've said before, pottery. And so I wanted to show you a sample. This is in our house. It's hanging as art. It is a concrete mold, and just look at the great repetition, the great marks. I love the different direction. And so I'm going to do that today in something little that, you know, I'm going to go in and kind of use those marks. I just want to encourage you to have your eyes open and to really, so often we're looking down, we're looking at our phones, and just to kind of put that away, have your little notebook, have your pencil, and as you're going and as you're like at a museum or at a park or you're in a new city, that you're just collecting gorgeous, gorgeous marks all around you. Just be inspired by nature, be inspired by architecture, be inspired by the art you see. I just want to encourage you to be inspired by what's around you and for you to pay attention what you love. What are you drawn to? And to really start taking, I don't know if I want to say pride in it, but just a really deep knowing that this is you. These are what you're drawn to. These are the things that make you like gasp. These are the things that make you take a second look. These are the things that you turn your head to, you know, like we are such collectors that I don't even know sometimes if we're aware of it. And then to really embrace what is your eye. I want to show you, if I can do this without spilling it, this is what my coffee's in right now. But like, look at this pottery work. Look at the mark making. It's so inspiring. Some are really thin. Some are really thick and deep. It's gorgeous. And so I think at the point that I started saying, no, these are my marks, and this is what I find beautiful, and this is what I want to use, and this is what I want to surround myself with. And I like things that are broken and put back together, like old breadboards or bowls that have been mended with metal. And those are the things that I find the most lovely. So I hope that this course is even just a reminder of you. and a reminder of the things that you find lovely. All right, one of the first things I want to do with some more of our, once we finish some of our ink up, I just want to take a little bit of our vellum. I'm going to leave it attached at the end. So I left it a little attached. I'm going to take my staples and slide them into my stapler. Okay. And so get creative about how you will make your marks. So this is inspired from a board, a breadboard that had been fixed and mended, a broken one with metal. This does not go very far in, so what I have found, if I kind of roll it a little, right, that's about as far as I can get, and I'm not even going to worry about that one, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end. Just kind of line it up. A regular stapler would work too. This is just what I have here. All right, so what about this whole area in the middle? Well, I just have some black embroidery thread and a needle. One of my favorite things to do is stitch. And I'm just going to come in here and kind of just continue it. And then knot it at the end so we don't have a runaway thread. And this is delicate paper, and it would be kind of easy to break and to rip through, but I'm being pretty gentle. Right, I'm going to go a little closer together because I didn't like that mark underneath, and then I'm looking up at the camera and breaking through everything. I'm just going to do this all the way to the end, and then I'm going to put this aside, and this will just be another one of our marks that I'm collecting and that will be included in our boards. Right, so here are just the vellum with the staples and with the stitching, and I think it's going to look really cool on our boards. I think a very easy and fun way to make marks is simply with watercolors. So don't get overwhelmed with everything. Pick one of your favorite colors. And so I chose an indigo because it works really well with this beautiful light green. And then I think it looks great with the black that I've kind of pulled together for mark making. So I'm going to just put a little water a few places to get my surface wet. And then I've already kind of sprayed my watercolor. A lot of times I like to spray it if I'm doing something like this, and so I can get more saturated pigment in the middle, but just more watered down. So I might even just do something like that. Right, and then I'm just gonna come in now. Normally If I'm doing this on my own, I'm just going to let it dry naturally, but because we are filming and I need to speed up the process, I'm just going to dry it real quick with a Ranger heated craft tool just to speed up the process. But I think the kind of where it these borders and how it dries and how the water evaporates is much more beautiful if you just give it time. And I want to show you a little trick, because as your paper may start to kind of move or bulge or bend a little, I'm just using my brush to hold it down so it makes sure that not all of my watercolor is spilling off the edge. All right, I love how this one dried, and I'm just going to put that one aside, but this one I think could use a little more just pigment. And so let's kind of bring it in a little, a few more places. And I'll even come in with a stronger saturation up here. All right, let's let that dry. And as I'm drying it, I kind of just tipped it a little. If you like drips. That's what this whole thing is about, figuring out even like what you like and what your tools and supplies will do. You can come in here with the And as you are clear gessoing or white gesso, whatever you want to use on your surfaces, I'm setting aside these 3 vintage French postcards, and I will be doing my palettes on them. So make sure that you have 3 substrates, whatever you choose, whether it's cardboard, whether it's paper bag, whether it is even lined writing paper. It doesn't matter, but I want you to make sure that you have 3 pieces, because we will kind of collect some of our palettes for each of the inspiration boards we're doing. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do, here's kind of what I have left. It doesn't mean I have to use everything, but I want to bring in a little of the green paint. So I'm going to do a larger thing here, and maybe a little something on vellum. So I'm going to take my shaper here, and you can use a palette knife, you can use a brush. I just want to get some of this color down. Okay, now I put that aside to dry. I'm going to take a piece of my vellum. And once again, you can see I'm using a really old brush, but I like the texture that it brings, and I like the mark making that just the brush itself makes. Okay, and I'm going to put this one aside too. I have an old envelope that I've clear gessoed, and I have a section of one of my stencils that will be released through Stencil Girl, and I'm just using that to do some mark making. Whoops. And I am going to come in and kind of zigzag my way through with this one. And we just took marks from my art to make these. It's really fun, and I'm going to show you one in a minute, and we're going to use it with some spray paint. So as you can tell, I'm not worried about it looking perfect, and you can even come down I'm not worried about extra paint. Let's just do one more. Okay, so I'm going to put this one aside also and let it dry. And now I have like a larger piece, larger compared to some of the other ones. And I'm going to take my paint here, and I'm going to add some white, and I'm also going to add maybe a little neutral gray and some raw umber. I just want to change the values, and we're just going to do a quick little work on this using just that, and then we're going to come in with a little a black India ink when it's all dry with some mark making, maybe a little graphite too. So I'm going to, let's mix those colors together, and then let's get this down so then we can start on our mark making. All right, so I have 3 little sections here of my paint, and because I know you're all going to ask me, I just have a gallon of it. It's by the company Claire, and the color is PNT 100 LT10, and it's the color grayish. So it's a beautiful, beautiful color. And that's what I'm using for a lot of our mark making, the color that I brought in. Okay, so we're going to add some white. I'm going to add a little bit of raw umber to another. Just a little bit. And I'm going to add just a little bit of a neutral gray to one. Okay. Just want you to be able to see the difference that just a little bit of a change can really add. So you don't always need a ton of paint, right guys? You can take your paints and you can play with them and explore and, you know, just see the variety you can add. And then I will also have some of the paint off to the side that untouched. Normally I'd be mixing paints in a bigger surface, but I want you guys to see everything. So I really wanted to have a lighter value here. And get that all mixed in well. And then hopefully, if I need to add more of each, I'll do that. Here is the raw umber. We have just a tad more of the raw umber. Let's get this gray blended in. And these two definitely were more fluid what I was adding to them. This was a thicker paint, so it'll take me a little bit more blending it in. And normally I would blend this in with a palette knife on a bigger surface. I'm going to add just a bit more to make it just a little more interesting. Alright, so let's just get a little more gray. I can tell that this neutral gray, it's probably because it gets pretty cold sometimes in the studio, that could be it too, or it's just getting a little too old. After I get this blended all of the way, I want to show you over here like 4 different varieties here, just with our mixing of what I'm going to be using. And I'm hoping you'll be able to tell here, this is just our paint without anything added. Here is our paint with white. Here's with some raw umber. And the last one is with a neutral gray. Alright, so now let's put together some of our mark making and move forward. But even this is now become a part of my pile of beautiful marks because I think this is stunning. I'm going to come in with the lightest, so it's just with the white. I think I have some of that gray still left on it. And I'm not wanting to cover everything. So you could even kind of dry brush it, meaning you just don't have a lot of paint on your brush. Alright, let me get a little more of the light over here. I just unknowingly kind of still had too much of the gray, so I really want this to show the contrast, even though it's subtle, with what we're going to add on top. Okay, let's let that dry. Alright, I'm going to bring in just the original paint over here. And hopefully it'll show. And down below, just going to do a larger section. Just block off, just doing some color blocks. That's really what we're doing. And you can see how it wasn't blended very well, but we're just going with it. This isn't really showing, so I'm going to come back in here, and this is the one with the raw umber, and we'll see if it'll kind of contrast a little more and stand out against that light background. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to bring in just my mechanical pencil, or even just some graphite. Just going to cut into that a little bit and go around those color blocks a little bit. Okay. Let's let it dry, and then we can bring in some marks on top of it.